The big story on India Ascents. The last 1 week has seen a lot of activity with elections in UK, France and Iran. But more than the victories, this is a lot about how the leaders have shaped up. Keir Starmer's brute majority, Marine Le Pen so near yet so far, and Massoud Pezeshkian's sudden leap into electoral mainstream have a larger theme, and that is of voter apathy, of electorates not being happy with the political choices they are stuck with. And then there is the US election, where recent Washington Post ABC News poll found that half the respondents felt both Donald Trump and Joe Biden are just too old to govern. In effect, they rejected both the choices that they had. The big story on India Ascents. Are the political elites in Western democracies delusional about what their voters, their electorates really want? And can they take lessons from the world's largest democracy, India, which seems to be doing far better than some of these democracies? Let's start with UK first. Keir Starmer has a brute majority in the House of Commons. He got there with a nearly 34% vote share. By the way, this is the second lowest in 100 years. This was an election where UK's smaller parties like the Greens, the Reform UK, have had their best showing in the last 111 years. Not since 1913 have voters searched for regional parties for better political choices. Now take a look at the voter turnout. The Institute for Public Policy Research found out that just 52% of UK adults cast their ballots on the 4th of July, which is the lowest turnout by share of population since 1928, when the vote was extended to all adults over the age of 21. In effect, people don't care about the political choices they had, they just don't want any of them that are available. Let's now move on to France, where the French President Emmanuel Macron is breathing a sigh of relief since he managed to stop Marine Le Pen's RN party's march to victory. But there's a lot more to that. RN received 33.2% votes in the first round, just 0.5, half a percent less than neighbouring England, which unleashed the Starmer storm, which swept big names like Liz Truss. Since 1958, voter turnouts in France have fallen steadily, indicating the disillusionment that French voters have with their political class. From the high 70s, it fell to a record of 45% in 2022, only to rebound this year because of tactical voting by every party after the first round. But given how unpopular Macron is, this is a message for a change of guard for the Prime Minister. But that's not what happened. Gabriel Attal continues to fight for another day as Macron figures out what to do with the fractured polity that French landscape is in right now. Let's now move on to Iran, the other place where elections took place in the last 1 week. Its President Massoud Pezeshkian, who's supposed to be a moderate, who won when Iranian people felt there's a real possibility of change taking place. The first round saw 40% voting. It's when Pezeshkian survived it that voting percentage rose to almost 50%, 49.8% on your screens. But unlike the UK and France, Iran has a much higher ratio of young people. So what do voter turnouts of 40%, 49.8% tell about people in Iran? That is, there is complete trust deficit when it comes to the political system. They have lost faith in their systems. There are no international observers for Iranian elections. There is no way of verifying their claims about following due process. So one needs to just go back and take it for what it is. Even though doubts regarding the rise in invalid votes indicates that the process was probably scripted, orchestrated maybe. And as for Massoud Pezeshkian's reformer credentials, well, guess what? The first thing he did was he reiterated support for terror outfit Hezbollah, suggesting he may not be very different from his predecessors. And his moderate credentials could just be the regime's way of placating the massive anger of Iranians against the draconian regime and the theocratic state that they are stuck with. Let's now move on to US. Voters now there must choose between Democrats and Republicans in each of the 50 states. Essentially, Americans that teach democracy to the world give their people, their own people, a binary choice. But that isn't the case in India, the world's largest democracy, where smaller regional parties are thriving. And in none of the states and UTs of India, voters are stuck with a binary choice. In fact, a start-up political party now rules in 2 Indian states in just a decade. A party that had monopoly over power for 40 years is now struggling for survival. In fact, as per Pew Research Center, India ranks high in the satisfaction index of how democracy is running in their country. On your screens, you can see that it's the high-income nations that are not seeing that. People are dissatisfied with the democracies and the democratic systems they had. I told you that why. Because of voter apathy, the fractured polity that they have. The crisis of confidence that the political elites in UK, France, US, Spain, Italy, I can go on, are facing is acute. Democracy is a journey. And while some nations started this centuries ago, they are now struggling with a political landscape that has not kept pace with the aspirations of their own people. By the way, Indians complain about a lot of things. But what I can say is, democracy and our democratic landscape cannot be one of them.